everybody focus on the very, very serious issues. Today is the 40th day anniversary of the tragic and barbaric school children in Peshawar, teachers and some of the staff that was there. I think it's absolutely horrendous. We also want to recognize what happened in Paris as well, and the barbaric killings there also of the journalists and the police and the innocent people who were not engaged in that. So I think it's a serious issue for us to look at. But also I think you will see today if you look at what's happening at the moment, people are attending then. If you look at Sweden, if you now look at what's going to be starting to develop in terms of the far right in France, and possibly here in terms of UKIP, what they've been saying, and also in terms of EDL, who will obviously seek to capitalise on this. So I think there's a significant movement that's changed, particularly since 7/7, so we need to be aware of what that is. And also I think what we need to do is look at how the Muslim community looks at this, how we deal with it, how we're going to respond to this. And there is an onus on us to look at this, and people can say, well, no, this is an issue about trying to, again, victimize the Muslim community. I don't think the issue is about victimization of the Muslim community, it's about coming to address the issues. When we talk about the number of young people that have gone across, and I mean those young people, and why they were able to be groomed by those individuals who actually made that link across. I have had two in my constituency who went across, and luckily they came back in one piece, and we had to deal with that. So there are a number of other people who I don't know about, who some I do know about that have gone out in different areas, and so we need to seriously address. And that we have to do in terms of the theological debate that we need to have, the discussion that we have within the community of our learned scholars who need to be looking at that. Perhaps some instances, I would say not so learned scholars, and that's what the difference that we're going to make and deal with those sort of issues. So before I go on too long, I've got to shoot off in a minute to a vote at 7 o'clock, and as a way of perhaps moving the discussion forward, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Mrs. Huma Price. Now, I'm not going to, she's a barrister, but I'm not going to tell you how many years she's been practicing for, because it doesn't look like that would be her age anyway, so I'm not going to that. And the fact that she specialises in immigration and family law, two very, very difficult issues. And I was very intrigued to see, as I am a Facebook friend of hers, to see when she's getting ready to go off to battle. And normally when she comes out, she says, yes, I won again. And so I think it's a very good work that she does. She's also a broadcaster and a TV presenter. She has her own legal show on Venus TV. And most importantly, above all that, she's the secretary of the Third World Solidarity Group, which she does absolutely well. But I think it's people like her who've actually made a stand, who actually have shown what it is not to be isolated in the community, but for people who stand to look at integration, to see how we move forward. And she does that in her normal life, and that's fantastic. But we need to do that. She is somebody who's kept her heritage, her culture, poetry, and all of those things together in a relationship which sometimes people in the community would deride. But I think it's good strength to her elbow, the fact that she's proud of the relationship she has and the way she's moved forward. And that's what we need. We need more people to be able to be proud of their heritage, culture and religion, but still be open there and actually be able to speak to people. So before I go on trying to speak all about her speech, she's speaking today about the criminality aspects of terrorism. Huma.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Khalid. I'm really very touched, thank you. I want to bring the perspective of a lawyer, a barrister, to this whole debate, because we've heard a lot of very political things about it. So whenever there is a terrorist attack, the first thing we do is we label the terrorists. We label them Muslim, freedom fighter, jihadi, depending on our own beliefs. To me, as a barrister and a lawyer, anyone who kills another human being is first and foremost a murderer and a criminal, and to me that necessitates the importance of building a psychological profile of him in order to deal with him effectively. That is something which seems to be missing. So going back to the Peshawar attack, obviously we were all shocked and horrified at the savagery and the brutality with which children as young as 6 were butchered at point-blank range. And we also reacted quite rightly at the time with a lot of anger and backlash, demanding immediate retaliation of this attack. Military courts were immediately set up, and I believe some hangings took place immediately. The incident itself almost got drowned in the backlash at the horror of the whole world to what had happened. And all types of evil punishments were suggested for the brutes who committed this attack. Actually, the savages who carried out this attack were all killed on the same day in the army operation that dealt with it. So we need to formulate more long-term strategies in dealing with similar savages in the future. And if you saw their photos, you would understand why I'm referring to them as savages. And today I want to focus on one aspect of this attack, which perhaps hasn't been talked about as much, in order to emphasize the need for building a criminal profile of these people in order to deal with them effectively. They shot the children at point-blank range, but they carefully came prepared with petrol to burn the teachers alive, and that's what they did. They burnt all the adult teachers, even the head teacher, all of them were women, gave them as painful deaths as possible by drenching them in petrol and burning them alive. And before people shrivel up in horror at what happened to the teachers in Peshawar, I want to digress a little bit and stop for a second and remind all of us that this is not the first time a group of people have burnt women. We only need to look at the history of India, where women were burnt alive with their dead husbands at fire for centuries, until a group of activists took it upon themselves to stop this inhumane practice, wrongly attributed to religion, Hindu religion. And that still hasn't stopped the accidental deaths of women in kitchens all over India, but there is a law in place that arrests the family members immediately when a death like that occurs. At least steps have been taken to deal with that problem. And then why go that far from home? We only need to go back a couple of 100 years in this country to remind ourselves that 9 million women were publicly burnt at the stake for suspicion of being witches. And this practice was attributed to the church. It's funny how religion is always used as a weapon for terrorizing women. And it's really interesting that the test for whether you're a witch or not at the time was that women were thrown into the river. If they drowned, they weren't witches. They were innocent. And if they surfaced alive, then they were witches, and then they were burnt alive in full public view for possessing supernatural powers. So history is repeating itself here. We have another group of people burning women in the name of religion. And let's not kid ourselves. The terrorists have stated categorically that a woman should only come out of her house twice in her lifetime, once after her nikah, when she goes to her husband's house, and the second time as a dead body to go to the cemetery. Now, was this burning of women just a misogynistic act? Is that the reason why these women were all burnt? And they were all teachers, you know, they were not sinners, they were not whores who were doing anything unlawful, sinful. They were respectable women who were the wives and mothers of army personnel. And I believe that they were burnt alive for not following the religious code of the terrorists and daring to follow a career and going out of their houses to work. They were not just burnt. We need to get inside the minds of the terrorists here. That's what I'm trying to emphasize. The terrorists gave them the rightful punishment of burning in the fire of hell. And that's what they believed they were doing. They were putting these women in hell for coming out. They duly enforced their religious punishment. And so what we need to do is we need to get into the minds of these terrorists. They have a religious agenda. We all know that. And they come out of their hiding places seeking heaven. They want to die and they want to go to heaven. Now they want to die, and how are we dealing with them? We are going to hang them and kill them. We're going to give them exactly what they want. We are going to reward them for their terrorist activities. How clever is that? How many more terrorists are going to be born to look for shahadat and look for martyrdom as a result of the punishment that we have thought for them in our anger, in our vindictiveness, and without thinking and getting into the minds of these people? So I just want to say, please, the powers to be, make criminal profiles of these people and then decide how to deal with them. They have an ideology, they have an idea, and you can't kill an idea by force. You can only kill an idea with an even more powerful idea, and that's what we all need to work on now, a more powerful ideology. Thank you very much.
And we start, well, David's going to be speaking for a few minutes because I think we're going to vote in about...
I'm a voter.
You're not voting? Oh, honestly. David, please. David is the chair of the Third World South America. Freshly elected again.
Thank you. I feel all right if I don't stand up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just say, as far as I feel, any human life that's lost is a sadness, and particularly children's lives. But I think, while we can feel sad for what happened in Peshawar and in Paris and in Nigeria, we've also got to have an element of disgust that people use these lives as a way of pursuing their own ends. It's completely and utterly wrong and must be stopped. But I've got to say, and I'm not sure I'm the only person who feels this, but I felt quite uneasy about the reaction about what happened in Paris compared to what happened in Peshawar. And there's a lack of equivalence in the respect that we show the people who have died. 150 young children died simply because the fathers were soldiers. A number of journalists, and it shouldn't have been any of them, but a number of journalists died because they happened to write and do things that the people who opposed them didn't like. But the reaction from the world was just so unbalanced. The Peshawar thing, if you look at the reaction from the leadership of the world, it's gone. And yet what do we say in the streets of Paris? 4 million people across the country, 45 leaders of the nations of the world walking through the streets of Paris. Apart from the imbalance between what they did about that and what they did in Peshawar, there's a huge element of hypocrisy. The President of Israel walking through against the terrorist attack when his state has committed state terrorism for 70 years against the people of Palestine. The Ambassador of Saudi Arabia on the streets of Paris campaigning for freedom of speech, then going back home to get somebody to administer 1,000 lashes to a man who's been locked up for setting up a liberal website. The Russian Foreign Minister walking through the streets, again, to show respect for people who died for freedom of speech. It's not a very good track record in Russia, is there? And the Egyptian Foreign Minister also there, and he goes home to a country where they've jailed people from Al Jazeera. Completely and utterly hypocritical. And it took me back to 2006 when I went to Israel for the first time. When I went, I went with one of our colleagues from the European Parliament. I insisted that I wanted to go to Palestine and meet the newly elected leaders of Hamas. And the colleague I was with had been in Palestine when the elections took place in 2006, and he said he never ever seen any democratic election run as fairly as the election in which Hamas was elected. But what did the West do? They refused to accept the democratic will of the Palestinian people, and they refused to recognise Hamas. And I'm convinced that if we took that brave step then on the West, we could have been in a very, very different situation in Palestine and Israel. We chose not to, and it's one of these things that really grieves me, that we like democracy as long as it gives us the results that we like. Similar situation to what's happening in Ukraine. For all the rights and wrongs in Ukraine, the Ukrainian people elected the president that the West didn't like, so the West helped undermine him and replace him. If they left him alone, we might not be seeing the changes that we are now. At the end of the day, I take on board what our colleague said earlier. Where do we go from here? I think that without a doubt, as a world, we really do have to start focusing on sending out a message that we respect everybody's lives equally. And the best place in the world to do that is in Palestine. And we should redouble our efforts to make sure we get some real progress there. And if it takes stronger sanctions or ostracising Israel in the eyes of the world, then so be it. And I'm not anti-Israel. I want to see a proper solution to that benighted part of the world. But as long as that sore is allowed to fester, it gives people who want an excuse, a real excuse, to carry on doing the sorts of things they're doing across the world. But if we resolve it, it gives us, as a world community, a chance to say, we can live together, we can put things right, and torn apart. If you look in our own part of the world, the huge strides we've made in the last 15 years in Northern Ireland, it's not perfect by any means. But the difference between where we are now and where we were in 1998 when the Belfast Agreement was signed, when if you think in 30 years, almost 4,000 people died. In the 17 years since, there's about probably 20 people died, 22 many, but far removed from the 4,000s that we're seeing. I've got to say it as well, and Tariq raised in his talk, I think the letter that went out yesterday, David Cameron said, if people got a problem with this letter, they've got a problem. Well, I'll tell you, I've got a problem. I thought it was a disgrace. If you took the word Muslim out, and you took the word Imam out, and you wrote to the Jews, and you wrote to a rabbi, or you wrote to Catholics, and you put Dear Father, or you wrote to the Anglicans, they would have been outraged. Because what it was saying was, you've got to prove that you've got a right to have British values. Why should you have to prove that? Any more than I would have to. I'm not religious at all. Why should I be saying there's being more British than what you are? The people who live here, contribute to this country. I mean, I've got huge respect for the people that I've met, mainly through Bushtack, the Muslim community in my part of the world. Without those people, hundreds if not thousands of people of the indigenous population in my part of the world would be unemployed. So I've got huge respect for the work they do. But even if that wasn't the case, to actually point to one religion and say, you've got a problem, the fact that using religion is a really negative anyway. Because, you know, whatever your culture, you know, your religion is only part of what you do. It isn't you completely, because you've got other things that make you what you are as human beings. But I just think that that was a huge mistake. I thought the mistake was bad enough. I thought the off-handed way in which the Prime Minister treated it was an absolute disaster. And I hope to God that we don't live to regret that crass efforts that came up yesterday. I hope between us we can try and find a way forward. I know that people have been sitting at this house for these 70 years, but the truth is, until we make from this part of the world a real step in the right direction of saying we want to try and right the wrongs. And this is not saying like, you're more to blame than we to blame. We all go back to the end of the First World War, who drew the lines, who let the Israelis take over Palestine. We'll have all that debate time and time again. Until we make a real concrete step in the right direction, all it will do is carry on feeding the people who want to exploit the differences between us. And people with the right frame of mind shouldn't allow that. And we need to do it, and we need to do it soon.
Who's going to take over now? So these both, I'm in the meeting, so who's going to take over?
Thank you very much, Khalid Mahmood Saab, for chairing half part of it. Now I'm taking over, and let me say a few words. I agree with every word David said, and I think he's taken all thrust of what I wanted to say. But I just wanted to say two things. It's all right. You were the first, so you had the first right. Let me tell you, I totally agree that I think the response of the world and how Pakistan is being victim of this terrorism is not very welcome. The double standard which Dave has just mentioned are huge, and we all know about it. We only see when Gaza is attacked by F-16 that on London streets there are 50,000, 100,000 people, and once it is gone, it is forgotten again. So we have to look at, in a more broader way, how we live in this world. There is 7 billion people living on this earth, 6.5, but I think they are expected 7 billion. So we have to look them as a human being. Not that these are Muslims, sectionalize them. These are Muslims, these are Jews, these are Christian, these are Asian, these are others. I think as a human being, everybody has the same right. And that is my basic principle. One thing which is very important is that when Pakistan, it is nothing, it is just a bell for the vote, so some of the MPs will disappear. Thank you. Let's have a little pause, because it is 2 seconds and I don't want... people who come first time, they feel there is a fire alarm, but it is not. It is just... Thank you. There will be another short bell, but I think I will keep on speaking during that. So I think we have to look, as I was saying, that there are people, whether they are from Pakistan, India, Palestine, Kashmir, or from Britain, they should be treated as equal and same. The blood has the same color. So Pakistan, and I wouldn't go into history, I think most of you know that why Pakistan is in the state where it is. I fought against Ziaullah. I thought he was the demon in Pakistan because he changed the whole direction of Pakistani society. And we are facing that even today. And I think Pakistan has given too long and too big sacrifice. 50,000 people have been killed since 9/11. And none of the people who did 9/11 were Pakistanis. It is a bad luck that Pakistan is geographically placed in a position that there is India on one side, there is Iran on one side, Afghanistan on third side, and China is also neighboring. So I think Pakistani leadership didn't use people of Pakistan proper values, and they should have done better. But they let West, which Dave has also mentioned, use Pakistan as a fighting force against Russian forces and communism. And that's why today we are where we are. I think another very important point is that Pakistan since 9/11 has given a big sacrifice. 50,000 people have been killed, 150 almost on 16th of December last year. Today there is holiday because in Muslim calendar, Chaliswa is a very important day, 40 days. And it is a holiday today there, and they are remembering. And I was just speaking to somebody that we should not forget them. We should do what Pakistani nation need to do, and Pakistani nation need to do is, there is no bad Taliban, there is not good Taliban. As Huma Price said, they are all criminal, they are all terrorists, and we should deal with them as a criminal and terrorist, not as a good or bad. Anybody who is on my side is a good one, anybody who is against me is a bad one. No, they are terrorists and we should treat with them. But another point which David has raised is that when it happened in Paris, and I can tell you there are a lot of Muslims who disagree with each the cartoons which have been published. They are not needed. Any prophet, whether it is Isa, Musa, Yaqub, or any other, should not be treated like general human beings, because there are a lot of people who believe that they were the prophets, and we should treat them with respect. Freedom of expression has a limit, and it has to have a balance. If something is published against Sarkozy and you are charged, then why can't you be charged when you write something against one prophet or other? And there should be laws, and I hope out of this killing of 17 people in Paris, there is a huge possibility that law might come about, because this is our duty, that we should bring in the laws that nobody can write and provoke another person. And I think the most important comment was by the Pope, when he said to this person who was standing next to him that if you abuse my mother, expect a hope from me. So I think we should not provoke other people, other feelings, and we should live peacefully, and that is the main aim of Third World Solidarity. I've spoken, so can I now introduce you to David Ward, who is a Member of Parliament from Bradford, and he's going to speak. He has spoken a lot, and I think he's been already reprimanded for speaking out for justice. So let me ask David Ward to speak. Thank you.
I was just thinking, if the Pope did actually punch someone, I wouldn't like to be the arresting officer. I don't think my career would go very far, not if it was on home territory anyway. I think there are a number of problems that we face in he's been very expansive in world issues. And I think there is actions which result in overreactions to the actions. And then we get an overreaction to overreactions, and then it escalates. Very often you'll get, and I've noticed this certainly when I get big gatherings in Bradford, where there are lots and lots of speeches, it's almost as if the next person that comes up to speak has to actually be even more angry about whatever they're complaining about than the person before, to prove I am more sincere about this, and so it goes on. And the next person has to be even more angry. It's almost like a competition, I feel. And that is also matched at the same time by a failure by many people in their belief to act at all. So when things happen which upset a lot of people, appall a lot of people, and then there is no action, or apparently no action of any significance by world leaders, then people start to see it as being really unequal, and there's an imbalance between how you react when that happens, whether it's a Russia shooting down an aircraft over there, and then whether it's bombing children and women in Gaza, and failure to react. And it's that sort of thing, the failure to have a consistency of reaction to events. Things are either right or they're wrong. And there's a too often a belief that it's wrong when it's that lot doing it, but it's not wrong when it's that lot doing it. And that makes it very, very difficult for politicians to, and I'll come on to this a bit later, to take positions, take stances on certain issues without being accused of being two-faced. And they said hypocritical, but really, let's be blunt about this, being two-faced. Is it humour? I used to, I remember referring to the Lee Rigby murderers as madmen. And I've actually moved on from that now, because, and I would not call them savages, I would call them people who did savage acts. Because I think you were absolutely spot on. We need to get inside the minds, because in some ways it makes it easy, doesn't it? These are just madmen. These are just crazy people. And there are lots of crazy. Now, some of the people who do atrocious things are literally crazy people, and they have mental health issues. But many of them, it can't be all of the ones that are going across to Syria. You know, these young people are going, they can't all be mad. They can't be all mentally ill. And so we need to actually get into the minds of people, or we need to find out why people feel that way, feel so badly about things, so torn, so distressed, so savage that they do terrible, terrible things. And we're sort of sat here in the quiet of this place here, and it's hard to believe. I mean, we could never do something like that, could we? I mean, I'm against capital punishment. I don't believe that the state should take the lives of people, however, what they've done. But I tell you this, if somebody came near and did anything damaging to my grandkids, I'd kill the bastards. So even me, the great liberal, there are points, there are things, there are positions, there are situations. Now what we need to know is, what is it? Get in the minds of these people. What is it that is happening to them? You don't come out of the womb to do savage acts. Something has happened along the way. And I was actually okay with the letter, by the way, to the mosques, because it was, in effect, it was the state through the Secretary of State saying, actually, we can't deal with this. It was almost an honest statement of despair. This is not a message sent out to all of the mosques that you lot are to blame. It wasn't. Read it. It wasn't. It was much more of a we letter than a you letter. But what it was saying is, there is, and it is simply a fact, that when there are very, very many young Muslim men who are being, not through the mosque, it wasn't saying that, but through the social media and other community influences, are being influenced to think about doing some horrendous things, then the mosques do have a role to play. A wonderful role to play in that, first of all, they see lots of young men, but also are very influential. People who can challenge some of the ideologies that get inside the minds of young people and distort and poison the minds. And who better to challenge? I can't do that. I can't talk about what the Quran really means, what it says, and Islam as the religion of peace. I can't do that, but others can. And I almost saw it as an act of despair, really. We're saying, please, we do need your help. We do believe in the same things. There was actually a letter sent out, this is to do linked to the Trojan horse, about the British values, and that was sent to all of the schools. It's non-statutory guidance on British values. I don't consider that to be patronising. That was sent to all schools. You can get schools to turn around and say, well, we do this anyway. Some schools will do it, some schools will not. All schools, if they can, should. Some mosques will no doubt be tackling things very well, some not. But all we're saying is, please help. That's how I read that. I know that'd be wrong, but you can see between myself and the other Dave, who's gone, that we have differences of opinion. But also, I've seen many differences of opinion from members of the Muslim community. Imams have been on TV and said similar things. So the ideology needs to be challenged. And there was a book written by Professor Simon Lee, who used to actually be my boss when I worked at Leeds University. And it was about he's a great liberal and a philosopher and a writer on jurisprudence, I think he was a lawyer as well. He wrote a book about the time of the Rushdie affair, and there was a burning of the books in Bradford. Like you remember in the 80s, I was a councillor with Eric Pickles, by the way, on Bradford Council in the 80s. And we had some real tussles over halal meat, over you remember the Honeyford affair? You know, there were difficult times in Bradford. And there was the burning of the books, which was outrageous, and it's people cast their minds back to the Nazis and the burning books and so on. But surprisingly, you would have expected Simon Lee to have attacked the people who burned the books as this great illiberal act. But he actually defended them quite almost perversely, if you know Simon. And he did it on the basis of, what is it? Why did they do it? Why did they do it? And they did it because they had no other way of expressing their unhappiness with the Rushdie and the response of and that's the way they did it. So we might not like it as great Western liberals, but allow them that anger, allow them that way to express in non-violent, you know, they weren't hurting anybody apart from liberal sensibilities. But when there is failure, and this is what we need to think about, when there is a failure to deal often with legitimate concerns, the danger is it opens the door to people who will exploit that and bend and distort and twist poison people's minds. So we need to be all the time rooting it back to what is the grievance. What is the grievance that possibly leads the way in to the crack, you know, like the water that goes into the crack and it freezes and expands. What is it? Is there a grievance? Is there a legitimate grievance behind this that way back has led back to the acts that were taken? And the final point I mentioned earlier on about the leaders, and Dave actually mentioned this, and something I was didn't go down very well with my own party, I must say, certain members within the party, and that's the Paris March. Because when you have a march like that, and a sombre march, and a coming together, the problem is now that there are too many people who say, as I said, what's he doing there? And I've got now people say, well, he was the leader he had a right to be there and everything. But it was I suppose it was just a gut reaction to somebody, especially after Gaza and the summer, it was just a human response from him. What the hell are you doing there? Or Saudi Arabia. And the problem is for world politics, covering a lot of areas here, but the problem for world politics is we have a lack of morality and leadership in the nations of the world. So it is very, very difficult for a political leader, whether it's Obama, whether it's our own government, whoever it is, it's very, very difficult for a political leader to stand up and say, you should not be doing that, without someone turning around and saying, well, look what you did. Whether it's Iraq, whether it's Guantanamo Bay. And we need really foreign policies. The Saudi Arabians, and you mentioned the lashes, we're quite happy to sell arms to them. And we need more ethics and more leadership, more integrity, even when it means we lose the arms contracts in international politics as a whole, before we can actually stand on any moral high ground. And it's only from the moral high ground that we should be looking at some of these terrible things that have happened to say that should not happen. And I can say that because that is not something I am guilty of myself.
Thank you very much, David Ward, and I know that on your this reaction you have been already penalized or said, but I think everybody knows that you are right, and they are just taking the same line which they do on a lot of international issues in the world. My next speaker is Lard Hussain of Luton. Just two sentences about him. Number one, he took a principled stand, and against Iraq war, he walked out of Labour Party. So I think when he speaks with not only a principled stand and going out of a party which was in the government and took us into that war, and a lot of us opposed that war. Today, what we are working on, we need more people like David Ward, Lard Hussain, and David Anderson to stand up to their principle, even if somebody disagree with them, or even their leadership disagree with them. Can I invite Lard Hussain of Luton to speak on Peshawar and parachute?
Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening to you. Today we're discussing a few things. The main purpose of the meeting is, of course, to discuss the events, tragic events of Peshawar and then Paris. And the reasons for these events, in my opinion, are very different, although they may be linked up some way going away back. But let us look at them individually. The events in Peshawar, young children, school children and their teachers were attacked. They were not at war with anybody. They did not upset anybody. They did not fight against anybody. They were innocent children going to learn. They were the future. They had no enemies. And those barbarians who took their lives, they may claim to be followers of a particular religion, but I don't think Islam has any room for these kind of barbaric people. They can use the name of Islam, but Islam does not accept these kind of people. Not even in war times. Children, women and elderly, they are to be respected even in the war times according to the Islamic teaching that I have read. And if you look at the Prophet's life and his companions' lives, you will see that. On the other hand, whilst I condemn the innocent killing in Peshawar. I also condemn innocent loss of lives anywhere in the world, and of course France too. But the difference here is that I, as a liberal, I believe in the freedom of expression, as David does, as most of us do. But freedom does not mean without any limits at all. We are free to wear whatever we want in this country. But that does not mean that we go naked walking in the streets. And there is a law in this country that provocation is against the law. You don't go and provoke people. And what had happened, those cartoons, they did provoke people. I condemn those who killed them. They should have, but there should be laws in these countries whereby, just as we have some laws in place, anti-Semitic laws in different countries, why can't we have some sort of blasphemy law which covers all the main religions and all the holy people in those religions? If you insult a prophet, whichever that prophet is, there are bound to be some people. I mean, in this case, nearly 2 billion Muslims in the world were offended. And in those 2 billions, obviously, there will be some who will be wound up to the level that they will do something more nasty. And I don't approve of them. But nevertheless, the difference between Peshawar and Paris is that in Paris, people were wound up, which I think we ought not to do that in future. We ought to have policies in place whereby at least we should stop people provoking others to the level. Whilst the children in Peshawar were not provoking anybody. They were not doing anything, to upset anybody. But at the same time, there is other factor that plays in the hands of these extremists, or the extremists take advantage of those. Or people are actually driven into that frame of mind where injustices in the world, the double standards that we have heard here before. Let me give you another example which is closer to my home in a sense, the place where I was born, Kashmir. Over 100,000 people have been killed since 1990. There are UN resolutions to say that people should be given a right to decide about their future. And the world is asleep over it. There are more than 3,500 mass graves identified by the Amnesty International. And none of them is investigated. We don't want to offend India at any cost. Isn't this hypocrisy? And those whose relatives and friends and family members have been butchered by the Indian army, when they've lost everything, what choice do they have? These are the kind of people who will go and join the extremists, of course. Look at the forced conversion in India in the recent weeks. Hundreds of Muslims, and this has been printed all over the media in India and around the world. Hundreds of Muslims are being forced to adopt Hinduism. Only in yesterday's newspaper I was reading that a Muslim family was put to light. They were burned to death. Now, this is where I think we ought to be fair, and we ought to have justice in the world, and we ought to speak up for those who are not strong enough to speak themselves or whose voices are not heard. Wherever they are, whatever religion they might have, whatever the color of the skin might be, here in this country, where we have freedom of expression, we have more responsibilities on our shoulders to carry that burden, to carry that weight, and speak up, stand up and speak up for those who are voiceless or whose voices are not heard. And also condemn the extremism. Extremism is very, very dangerous, whichever side it comes from. It could be Hindu extremism, it could be Islamic extremism, it could be Christian extremism, or whatever, because that takes onto terrorism. People take law in their own hands and they start killing people. We have seen enough of it in Bosnia. We have seen enough of it in Palestine. We're still seeing. I would say, whenever I speak to our politicians here in the UK, the United Kingdom can do a lot more. We are permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. We are head of the Commonwealth. We are a strong member of the European Union. We have a lot of influence in the world. And Britain can take a lead. And one thing that I have to say, that Britain is respected much more compared to many of the other powers in the world, who may be more powerful than us, but I can proudly say that Britain is more respected in many ways. Yeah. And that is where we will need to be going. We need to bring justice to some of these places, Palestine, Kashmir, and other places where innocent people are being killed day in, day out, and the world is turning a blind eye to them. If that continues, I'm afraid more killings will go on. I can see people will go into more extremism. And in order to bring people back home, we need to deal with the injustices in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What I want to do is I want to ask a couple of people to speak who want to say something. Amanullah Khan Sahib will be the first one. I want to thank some people as well, Councillor Parvez Ahmed and Raja Sahib and Ghulam Farid from Hammersmith Islamic Center, Alex and Yasmin Qureshi as well, Kifale sitting here. Amin Noon came all the way from Slough, so thank you very much, and a special thank to the media, because I think although we are very limited people here, 10, 20, 30 people, but this message will go to millions. And what I want to say is the Third World Solidarity will carry on our work. We need your support, and I think you have supported us for 29 years. I hope with the next year, when we are celebrating our 30th anniversary next year, the world is a better place, because I want to leave a word for my children and grandchildren, a better word than I received it from my parents. So let's work together to make it a better word. So that is Habib Jan Sahab, thank you very much, Rai Khalid Sahab, and everybody who is sitting here. Anjam Zia Sahab, you are yourself not only individual but very great organization which you represent. Can I ask Amanullah Khan to say a few words, and then we will have a group photo as well, because I know
Chair.
Yes. Amanullah Khan is a founder member of Pakistan People's Party and a journalist and a very senior intellectual and poet and whatnot. Yes. When you hear you
understand. And Right Honourable David Vaughan, MP, and ladies and gentlemen. In fact, I was very effusive, and I was deeply shocked. I'm a poet, and poet's sensitivity and sensibility is very sharp. I had written poems in Urdu and English, but when I came here, my really mood changed. So I would speak just in prose. Excuse me for that. I am very thankful to Mr. Mushtaq Lashari for giving me an opportunity to communicate my innermost thoughts. First of all, Peshawar Public School carnage is a despicable, horrendous, and macabre act of terror and massacre. Peshawar massacre. I've written a poem, but I won't go into that. In fact, I feel proud of my country, Pakistan. Pakistan has done the same for freedom, which was done by Great Britain against fascism. My country has done has taken great steps and great sacrifices against the monster of fascism and monster of this terrorism. In fact, I don't want to take pride, but it was because of Pakistan that the West defeated Soviet Union. You were afraid of it. Like I was in deep space, you were nowhere. So instead of demonizing Pakistan, build up Pakistan, appreciate Pakistan. Pakistan has paid a very heavy price. We have lost 90,000 people. 90,000 people. If our army is brave, if we are dedicated, that is to our credit. We are for democracy. I've been to jail many times for democracy. So what I want to propose through MPs, Pakistan should get a Marshall Plan on the same pattern which you and other countries got after defeating fascism, Hitlerite fascism. You know the contribution of Stalin also. Stalingrad lost, Soviet Union lost 20 million people. It's not many people. So we have lost so many people. We have lost our economy. We are not begging. We will build up. We will build up. We are like that bird, which rises from the ashes. We have given sacrifices of our children, of our moms, of our teachers. Who says our women are backward? The women of my country, the teacher said, first you shoot me. I will not betray my children. I will not betray my students. I will not betray my pupils. I salute to her. Then, sir, this is the Marshall Plan. Kindly put it across. And to the Pakistan rulers and people of Pakistan, I want to say, give up begging. Implement Article 3 of Pakistan Constitution. Chairman Lashari knows what it means. That means from each according to his ability to each according to his work. Give something to the peasants. Give something to the workers. Give something to women, If you cannot give 100% jobs to women, at least don't demonize them. Don't put them behind the iron curtain, The iron curtain on women must be over in Pakistan.
Thank you.
You understand? My last is, this Frankenstein monster violated the Geneva Convention as well as it violated Islam. Because Islam is, I'm not a very religious person, but I'm proud of being a Muslim. I had my, Islam does not stand for the monstrosity of genocide or infanticide. It is not King Herod of the biblical times. It is not depravity of Madame Albright, who said in an interview when she was asked that because of the US sanctions, 1 million children of Iraq died. And she said within inverted commas, it is worth it. Shame on them. And at the same time, shame on these monsters called Talibans. I condemn them. I'm not afraid that they put bullets in small kids, children, And I salute today Chairman Lashari and MP and Lord Saab, that great lady who stood like a rock, and she said, first you shoot me. I will not betray my pupils. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know that we all agree on one thing, that injustice, wherever it is, will bring in more reaction. So let's work together to remove the injustices. And I think injustices start from home. Uma has very rightly said that we should not do injustice with women, we should not do injustice with children, we should not do injustice with anybody. And I'm very pleased that two of the ladies sitting there are from education, and they are working in Great Britain to bring out the poor children into better education. Can I ask everybody to come behind us? I will stand up because I want to sit, ladies to sit here. Ghulam Fareed Sahab, we will have a group photo because I know the media was here. Everybody. Alex, you come here. Yasmin, you come here. So let's close the chairs. Chair on your right.
After that. You can take this one. I'll pay you, don't worry. I'll look after you. Can I give you
that chair as well? Yasmin, you sit here. You come here. Alex, you sit there. Bring your chair near. Mohsen Abbas sahab, apart from journalists, you are part of this meeting as well. Come in graciously. You will speak in a minute. Yes, they are both Alex and Yasmin are from education. Yeah. Again, Mohsen bhai, you come in. Thank you very much. Kifale, you have to come as well after you have taken your photograph. Hold on for 1 second. Kifale is a member of Executive Committee of Tariq Solidarity and Ethiopian. We will be doing a meeting very soon on Ethiopia.
Thank you. Brent, I thank ladies. No problem.
Kifale, you have to come in.
Why examination front?
Come in, Kifale. We will keep on talking because I think
Mine are the only ones that have been published.
I'm not worried because I will take from whom a prize.
Asif, mera camera. मेरा कैमरा उधर पड़ा हुआ है.
if you don't mind.
Can you take it from
नहीं ये price she will put it on. But there are a lot. I think Kifale has one.
On Facebook?
There is a general one.
Mine is a bit like BD3.
Asif, मेरा कैमरा पड़ा है.
I drive different.
Okay, भैया ले लेना. तस्वीरें ले लें. Then David is here. You can carry on speaking. Yeah.
For the BD3 area.
Thank you, Asif Das. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody, and carry on talking.